So, guys, we are joined with Handsdan or Danny O'Sullivan for this episode of the Strong for Life podcast. Myself and Danny know each other now, probably know of each other for about 8 years, I would say, since I was in Australia in 2016. But we've gotten much closer over the last probably 2 or 3 years, and we've been really just helping each other out, sharing ideas, and just basically trying to improve each other's social media or training, any questions. And Danny's been a great person to just have in my corner over the last 2 or 3 years. So I want them to come on, talk about social media, talk about fitness, talk about online coaching. It can be a very, I guess, people will want to have a big following, but Danny's going to show the other side of that today as well. But before we jump in, Danny, do you want to give people a bit of a background about who you are and what situation you're in now?
Yeah, so I've been in the fitness industry now, both part-time and full-time for about 22 years. So even though I'm only 39, I've been I've been around sports all my life. So I've been able to come from different modalities. And I guess most recently, since we've been acquainted, I guess in 2015, I entered into the space of kind of handstands, mobility, mainly coming from a background of too many injuries and just trying to get a better understanding as to the why behind that. And that's kind of what led me down the track of where I am now. And yeah, obviously, as you know, the last 2 years have been a dream in the context of, I hit the pinnacle, or at least I hit the goals that I potentially never thought were going to be achievable, and they were, in terms of growing a large following on social media, being able to travel around the world as a result. I have a young family.
With your family, 2 kids.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's been amazing. And there's obviously amazing things that have come from that I'm happy to go through today. And I guess I also want to show the raw and honest side of there's always two sides to a coin. So I'd like to kind of go through that as well, because I think it'll resonate with a lot of people. And, I want to show the authenticity behind having a large following, but also what's the trials and tribulations that come with that.
Yeah. And I think just maybe quickly, we talked about this in a previous episode, but I think just quickly maybe give people a quick rundown of kind of what happened, because your coach, as you were saying, you've been in the industry for 22 years. 2015, you got into the handstand kind of theme. That's where we crossed paths in Australia, just seeing each other's content. But yeah, what happened in was it 2022 when things just went crazy, or 2021?
It was 2022. So I'll give it a condensed version. January 2022, decided to put a lot more effort into TikTok. I've been following a few kind of, gurus in the space, and I was always blocking out what they wanted to say. And they weren't even in the fitness space, just in more social media and how to grow. And then I just made a pact in 2022. I was just going to do exactly what they said. These guys are banging on about this is how easy it is. So I said, all right, I'll do it. And I posted 3 times a day for 3 months straight on TikTok. And I went from 0 to 70,000 followers. And then I decided, okay, well, that kind of strategy that I was using and testing certain hooks, and this is before, obviously now everybody kind of is very well aware of what a hook is and stuff like that. But I feel like 2.5 years ago wasn't as well known. There wasn't as much of a strategy for people on Reels especially. And so TikTok obviously were the driving force behind that. So I put a lot of effort into getting things out there, trying, testing, asking the audience, are you enjoying what you see? Do you want to see more of this? And then I basically put it onto Instagram. And at the time, Instagram decided they changed their algorithm to be a bit more performance-based, very similar to the way TikTok was. And as a result, the videos that I knew worked on TikTok, hey presto, they worked on Instagram. In terms of the growth, we went from, I believe we had about the same followers at the time. So I think I was about 5,000 followers, something like that. And then I went from 5,000 to over 300,000 over a 2-week period, which was absolutely insane, as you can imagine.
How many videos were going viral at that time for that type of growth?
So there was definitely 4 or 5 that I could picture off the top of my head, because I've repurposed them since, and we could talk about that with strategies and stuff. But one of them had 14.5 million views, and then the rest of them were in and around between 2 and 5 million. Most recently, I have a video currently on 7 million views that's separate to those, and I only posted that 4 days ago. So it's, depending on when this goes out. Yeah, well, I'm going to talk about that too, because it's It's
Cool.
another thing that I think people neglect, which can be very clever way to grow your social media following. So I'd be definitely keen to, you know what I'm like. I'm happy to tell everybody everything. There's enough, as I
Yeah,
say, there's enough pieces to the pie, and the pie only gets bigger when we collaborate. So that's kind of the way I've been,
that's it, man.
doing for the
Abundance.
last 2 years.
Yeah.
And so in terms of those videos, there was the very similar strategy behind all of them. So it was just like a good hook, raising a question, making you test something, and then kind of giving you the solution. And that was very much what I've done with a lot of my videos that are the highest performing.
Yeah, I remember it was like the hamstring test, the
Can
leg
you touch
raise.
your
That one
toes?
went crazy. Yeah, yeah. And then people could do, and they're like, "Oh my god, this actually works. This is crazy." And then it's very shareable and everything. And then it was like it was really cool because like I was literally talking to you, and then I was just seeing you giving the updates, and I would be checking your Instagram as well because I'm like, "Oh god, he's at like 400,000 now." And Danny's been at like over 500,000 now since that time, really. So 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, we've had a kickback. So if anybody's never gone viral or has never built a social media following to that extent, I mean, you're well aware of this, like it fluctuates now as well. So when the more followers that you have, the more followers you have that unfollow you as well. So it definitely works in that realm where, you know, people just will watch your stuff and then eventually they just get tired and they unfollow and you don't take it to heart and it's all part of the process. So we've actually fluctuated a little bit. I think the highest we got to was about 570,000. I think we're
Yep.
back down around 530 something like that. And so it does fluctuate. So I want people to understand that, don't take it to heart. We're human beings and people just will get fed up watching you, and that's okay. And that's where you kind of want to keep a strategy going that's working and kind of testing different strategies all the time. Because, yeah, like there was a time when I was posting every single day. And then most recently, because my business has got so busy and I have another business, it's like that I wasn't posting as regular. I have not been posting new content as regularly. And so as a result, then obviously people see that and your engagement goes down a little bit. In saying that, I posted the other day, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't put enough effort into, which is literally this particular post took me, I would say, 15 seconds because I knew it was good because somebody else posted it and it had 1 million shares. And it was something that was related to the fitness industry, specifically mobility, which is my niche. And so all I did was went in, clicked the three little buttons on their reel, just said remix, and then shared it on my page. And now it has 7 million views. And what I also did
That
was
is wild.
I put a call to action in the description. So now everybody is entering into my email list because of the call to action that I had, which was the video is just this little gecko just moving his hand. And it's just basically saying, just like click, 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 click. It's this Chinese music. And so it's like everybody can relate. Anybody who has shitty shoulders can relate. And so the comment underneath the description just says, comment shoulders 1 if you want a shoulder program. And literally people have just been commenting in there because of that. And so it took me 30 seconds to reshare it. That's it.
That's so funny, man. So I'm
Yeah.
actually going to remix that off your page now.
But isn't that the joy of it? Like, because
Yeah.
it's like, why not? So last time I checked, I think it was 952 followers just from that post.
Wow.
952 new followers. So now my engagement has gone from, about 2 weeks ago, it was starting to creep back up. It was maybe about 350,000, which it wasn't great for my size. But again, I hadn't been posting regularly. It's now
per
at
month, like, yeah.
Yeah, so it's now at 6.8 million the last time I just checked.
Yeah. That's
So
and
what
you made a
happens
good
then is,
point. I was just saying, like, you made a good point. It's just like just understanding the game and playing it that's what it's all about, like, as opposed to
well,
getting
to give you an
frustrated,
example,
like,
let me give you an example. So like 2 days ago, I literally did, 2 days ago, I did about 2 hours of filming. So I got about 10 reels done. I now send that off to my video editor and then they get they go and edit it and they caption it and then they send it back. Then I schedule it with my admin/social media to post it. So it's like this one reel that got 7 million views took me like 15 seconds to reshare and write that one sentence. And it's been the best performing video of this year for me. Like, so it's not to say don't do the 2 hours of filming. It's that you keep trying everything and you be clever, because my best advice is always keep it within your niche. Like, you know, even though it's a little gecko, it's still talking about mobility. So it's going to attract the people who would maybe come and look at my other videos and then go, actually, this guy's got really good content, as opposed to me dancing to a TikTok video and then it's like, it doesn't come out very well.
I don't know, man. I think you should jump on those trends a bit more frequently.
Oh my God. I actually did one
That's
yesterday.
another point, actually, just on that, Danny, is like, you can kind of, if you're constantly jumping on trends, then, or even if like, if you just use the strategy of like anything that goes viral, okay, I'm going to remix that, you might get tons of followers, but they're kind of just jumping on because it's a viral thing rather than maybe resonating with your content. And that's where, like, what you were saying about, you know, having, once they get onto your page, then they're like, oh, okay, this guy's got tons of high quality content that's actually really helpful as well, rather than just loads of memes and viral stuff.
Yeah, but this is where it comes down to the strategy, right? So I was camping over the weekend and I met a girl who she was living in New Zealand with her husband and 2 kids. Her daughter, who's a 3-year-old, has some condition that there's only 1 in 35 people in the world who have it. And
Oh my
she
God.
sold her house, herself and her husband sold her house in New Zealand. They flew to Brisbane, where supposedly the training for this particular condition, Melbourne and Brisbane have the best places or something on this side of the world. So they literally sold their house. They bought a caravan and an SUV, and they're traveling around Australia to get her the treatment that she needs. And she started an Instagram page because obviously, you know, they're trying to survive off donations as well. And this is where I said to her about the strategy. I said, you putting up things that are raw and authentic about you, and then maybe catching on to a viral thing that parents would send to each other, could potentially blow your Instagram up, or her doing something that is a trend could blow it up. So then she gets more donations. So the strategy depends on what is it that your product is. If you're a coaching service like ourselves, then ours is really about who am I as an individual? How good is my quality of service? And then what is my exposure to show you? Like, what am I doing to show you? While as someone like her, as an example, might be a different strategy where she wants people to resonate with her, see the struggles that she's going through, literally just to try and give her 3-year-old daughter the best start in life. And I think that's what's very important with people, is like, understand what you're actually trying to do behind it. Like, if you are just looking for brands, which we can talk about, you know, I get a lot of brands who reach out to me, and now having a lot more experience about how to deal with them, now I've gone from just getting free product to actually getting paid to talk about a brand. So, you know, that's a big thing too. So it just depends on like what resonates with you, but not becoming, as I say, like, don't become just this product fiend who's like, oh yeah, give me money and I'll just sell anything, which I've seen a lot of people do also. Like, one day they're showing some shampoo and the next day they're showing the trainer, and the next day it's just like, oh my God, does this person actually do anything? So that's obviously their strategy, and they probably make money
Like
from
a
it.
product whore, basically.
I wasn't going to say whore, but that's exactly what I was implying. Yes, product whore.
Yeah. And it's like, I think you, like, especially if you're a coach or a PT and you're trying to get a following to sell some product, like, you're much better off selling coaching. Like, it's a much better option, in my view, like, than selling something for $10, or you're getting a $10 kickback for something. And it's probably diluting your trust as well in the marketplace if you're doing a lot of that, depending on what you're trying to promote, of course.
I completely agree. I've said this time and time again. You know, I get brands who I say no to because I'm like, it doesn't resonate. Like, you know, I had somebody saying, do you want a dog bed? I'm like, have you seen a dog in my videos? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? While as I'm
It
a
would
big
be a
advocate.
great if there was an influencer, like fitness influencer with their dog, that would work really well. But yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah, so it's just having that strategy. And I I'm a big advocate for barefoot shoes. I'm a big advocate for training my feet and mobility. So guess what? I get a lot of those sort of brands reaching out because they're watching everything. I just had a brand reach out now about they're like similar to an Aura ring. So no, potentially what I generally do there in those instances, I'll try it. Like I'll say to them, okay, send it to me and I'll try it. If I don't like it, I'll be honest with you. And at that point, then I'm like, I do opt for some paid collaboration. So like these headphones that I'm wearing at the moment, that particular brand, I charge them $500 to post a reel based on their brand.
Yeah. It would be a really funny reel if you had if you'd done loads of brand deals and you just had all of the brands on your body, like covered in shoes and like different hats and rings and like all the supplements.
But the thing is, it might actually work because people go, "That's hilarious,"
Yeah.
right?
It would be a funny post. Um, so I love what you said about that's actually, just as we're talking there, man, I think like a cool idea would be looking at like remixing a viral video maybe once a week or a few times a month, and then just have that all your other content going as well. Like that's actually something I think I'm going to start doing. So thanks for the tip. And
Mate, we've been bouncing ideas for the last 2 years off each other, and it's been great to watch your growth. Obviously, I have seen that you've taken a lot of advice from me, and that's been awesome. And then I guess the advice that people don't see that I've taken off you is actually making my online business even better. So like, what I've shown you, I guess, is more the front of house. You've shown me obviously to enhance the back of house and making sure that, I'm a very refined person. You've seen obviously the level of detail that I go into on things. So it's been nice that we've been able to bounce those ideas back and forth, because potentially people in our space in a similar situation might look at each other as competitors. But actually, both of us have realized that there's enough in here. And if we can actually refine each other's businesses, we both do better. Like that's the
yeah,
ironic thing, as opposed to like, well, why would I help you? I want to work with, I want to work with the people you're working with. It's like,
yeah, our niche
keep,
is so like it's the same basically now. Like it's pretty much the same like avatar that we're targeting. And yeah, like I talked to Danny when he was going viral. We were talking a little bit about business stuff, but then I was talking to him about reels and content, and then I just started applying what Danny told me, and I went from 5,000 to now to almost 230,000 in the last 18 months, not even 15 months, I think it is. So yeah, I think that's the big thing. Like as a coach, you can kind of feel, well, if he'll take my clients and then there'll be no one left for me. But like, you just need 30 to 50 clients to have an
there's,
incredible online business.
there's like
There's
8 billion people in the
more
world.
more than 30 people in the world.
But here's how I answer this, right? When you work as a personal trainer in your local area, okay? And if you're a decent personal trainer, you potentially could have your books full, right? Like you could probably have a full book. And so let's just say on average, you're probably looking at about 20 people if they're coming more than once, as an example. And if you're really being in the industry long enough where you're probably charging a decent enough price, and then you value time outside of work as well. So you're not just in there 12 hours a day. Do you not think that you could have 20 people in an online setting? Like, do you know what I mean? Do I not think that even me and you talking to each other is going to affect both of us having, like, because both of us have far more than that. So it's like, and we can still work together and help each other and still continue to grow alongside each other, right? Like that's the beauty of this. And I think anybody listening to this needs to resonate with that, because the worst people that are in this industry are the ones that are selfish and are the ones that think it's their way, it's their method, all that kind of stuff. That shines through to people. Whereas the people who are in this industry the longest, it's because they actually have created collaborations, they've created good circles, and they're actually open to show vulnerability, and they're open to actually talk to each other, right? Like you've been in good circles of males now. I think it's super
Yeah.
important as we age. I said this to you off screen, like, you know, since my social media following has gone bonkers, before I'm a very people person and I used to teach a lot of group style classes and seminars and whatnot. I've actually found that the higher my page gets and the higher the following is, the lonelier I've actually felt as an individual. Maybe that's because I have lost people who I would have regarded as friends over the last few years, for whatever reason. I'm not really going to go into some of them, but a lot of them, I don't know why. It's still a question mark. Potentially it's because they wanted to be where I am. I'm not sure, but it's been really interesting, and so much so that I have actually moved location. Like, I live in a different location now, mainly because I was like, well, I was living in Sydney and the people who were around me weren't really resonating with me, and I needed to change. And now I'm on the Gold Coast, and that obviously comes with its struggles as a male entering into a new location. And so I've had to do a few things and put myself out of my comfort zone to try to ensure that, I guess, my mental health is obviously still on point. Because for anybody who doesn't know me that well, like, I have 2 kids under 5, I've got a beautiful fiance. So we live the other side of the world from any kind of family help that comes with its challenges. We both are obviously very busy workers. So we work full. I would like to think I probably work over full time, but both of us work full time. And so what I've noticed is I've had to be really raw and honest with myself in terms of my vulnerability. I've had to put my hand up. I've been open and actually going, we spoke about this previously, where I know you took up dancing as an example and you've taken up diving. And it's like, what I've noticed with a lot of the men that I work with is a lot of them are stuck in a routine, and they're stuck in this routine of, I work in my job, I commute in the mornings, I commute back in the evenings, and there's not enough, like, they're just caught in this carousel basically. And it's like, well, what do you do for fun? And then, they reminisce on the times when they did play a sport, and after a game or after training, maybe they hung around talking to their mates for a bit and then off they went. And, I noticed that we lose that when we stop playing sports, or we lose it when we're not affiliated with a club. And for me personally, I spend most of my time here creating content, which in an online setting looks like it's awesome. And it is, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't change it for the world. I love what I do. But the other side of things is actually making sure that we still have connection with people, still ensuring that, in my scenario, moving to a new city was that I could actually start creating friends. And I had to be very vulnerable to do that, because if you stay in a studio, how can you expect to make friends? So, actually one of the ways I did it was the one of the white label apps that I was using at the time. I was actually in conversation with one of the marketing people, and they had said to me, hey, there's actually another guy who's just moved to the Gold Coast using our app. Maybe you guys should connect, that might actually work. And then this was their exact words. They said, now you might not want to reach out to him because he only has 200 followers on Instagram. That's what they said to me. And I said,
that's how you gauge a friend, like, isn't it? If they have to have at least over 50,000 followers.
I'm in the macro, man. I can only talk to macros.
Yeah.
And so I said to them, I was like, well, to be honest, I said, it's not usually what I look for in a friend, but and now we're like, we got cinema together. We're best of friends. He's actually from England and he lives here. And interestingly, I gave him some strategies, and he now has 18,000 followers. So he's nearly in the friend zone.
Yeah, the loneliness one is a really tough one. I struggled a lot with that in Australia, and then when I was traveling in 2021, 2022, before I started dancing. And I totally resonated with you, what you said as well about being, because your fiance, she's Scottish, is she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's super hard, man. Like, not having any sort of family support, it must be difficult. Like, because I think that's the thing I thought about a lot when I was living in Australia, and I was engaged at one point. Was just all of the little things, like, we dogs, and then what this in WA, we'd no one to leave the dogs with. It was like, oh, we need to pay like $50-$60 every time we wanted to go anywhere to, like, get someone to look after the dogs. So, like, obviously with kids, it's must be much more challenging. You can't be like, here, mom, or, here you go.
Yeah,
like, we're going away.
Yeah, we don't have that. But I tell you what we do have, which has been amazing. We were quite tactical. So when we moved up here, we kind of house sat for 2 months, and we kind of had a look around areas and what would resonate us as parents with 2 young kids. And then the area that we found, we now have some great neighbors who, in fairness to them, are absolutely amazing. And, there's been times back in February, I had to travel all the way back to Ireland by myself. And just knowing that we had some neighbors who were coming over every night just to make sure the girls were okay. But I think it's important to note this because everybody wants to talk about their struggles as to why they can't achieve something. Like, oh, he's lucky because he lives in Australia and he was able to do this. But the other side of things that people don't see is the injuries that I've had, the things that I've had to fight through, and again, living a life with two young kids on the other side of the world, which it takes up half of your day. So you have to be more refined for the times that you are building content and creating a business. I remember during lockdown, I used to go into my friend's gym at 2:00 in the morning and film my content. And it's like, because the drive for me was that I'm doing this. This is what I've set out to do, and nothing is going to get in my way. Up until about 4 months ago, I used to call that stubborn. But now actually someone told me a better word, which is tenacious. And it's because I come from a working class area in Ireland where I was always defined as being the person who was just a messer in school and was just going to be nothing, basically. You were just going to find yourself a job and just, make your ends meet. And so I've always had that drive in me to be more. And I don't know who I'm trying to prove it to. Maybe it's myself, but it's just something that's instilled in my brain that it's like, well, if you can do it, you just show me the way and I'll do it. And I'll work harder than anybody. And that's literally been my mentality. I used to go in to a gym every Sunday for 2 hours consistently and just film. And I got really refined. So in the 2 hours, for the first half an hour, I would sit down and I would write out just the topics that I was going to go through.
When was this, Danny? When did that start, this process?
So that was around when I was doing the TikTok. So January 2022. I was posting most days on social media before that, but that was before kind of Reels. So the strategy was a bit different. I used to post videos that I knew bigger platforms like, big kind of mobility platforms would reshare my content because I was using their buzzwords and I knew that they would reshare it. But in terms of when I got my Reels on point, that was every Sunday without fail, 2 hours, 30 minutes writing down all the topics and then a few bullet points. I never script. I don't believe in trying to write it word for word. And then I used to edit it then after that. So this is before I even had a video editor. And I was probably spending about 15 hours in total a week in terms of building my social media. I would say I'm still at a negative if we talk about like the amount of hours that I put into this business, right? Like, I think if everybody's honest with themselves... Are you trying to
tell people that like you've done 15 hours a week consistently for 2 years and you've gotten better from doing that? Is that right? Like just doing a metric ton of volume and you've actually gotten better at the skill. As you were saying that, the thing I wanted to ask you is like, do you think learning the handstand has helped in... For me, that was a huge thing for me when I was like, oh, now I can handstand and I couldn't before. And it's because I've just done a ton of practice, like almost daily for like a year or 2 years or 5 years. I found that as a really great entry into like, oh, I can improve something I'm bad at with actual consistent practice and good guidance. And now I just apply that to everything.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I was as a kid, I was captain of like sports teams. I was a free taker. So for me in Gaelic football, taking a free, it's the same type of kick every single time. I was a long range free taker as well. So anybody who is Irish will resonate and understand. But in Gaelic football, you can take what's called a 45, which means it's a free from 45 meters out. And I was the person who used to take them, even as all the way up. So I always understood that repetition like allows you to refine. Like that was just, my mentality. But I defo agree that getting into handstands as an adult allowed me to be vulnerable back to being a beginner and trying to decipher like, why the fuck can a 5-year-old do this and I can't? And that really opened my world to it. And to give people the kind of idea of who I am as an individual, I got my first 10-second freestanding after 6 weeks. So I literally went from zero, like on a wall, but then I reached out to the person who was teaching me and I said, what do you think's realistic? He says, you do 3 hours a day for 6 weeks, you'd probably be able to do it. And that's
I
exactly
was
what
going
I
to
did.
ask you how much time, and that makes sense, about 3 hours a day
Probably about 3 hours.
to do
And
that
then
quickly.
when I got up to one arm standard, I was doing 5 hours a day. And that was literally all I did in training had to allow me to be better at handstands. That's all I was interested in. And so now
Yeah.
with my business, everything that I do business wise is to make the business better. Like, as in, I try not to waste any time on shit. Like, to give people an understanding of the mistakes I've made, I spent 7 months last year building an online membership because the app I had wouldn't do what I wanted it to do. And now we don't even use that membership.
Yeah.
It sits there. We don't even use it. So I spent 7 months, and I'm talking some days it was 12-hour days. So I traveled the world last year, and a lot of the times I was working whilst, my kids were sitting in a swimming pool in a nice luxury resort like the Maldives, and I'm working on the computer. Because for me, it's the goal of like what I want to do for my life, and what I was trying to do with this 500,000 followers as well, right? Like, because when you go from 5,000 to 500,000, guess what happens? Your inbox gets absolutely overwhelmed. And if you don't have the automations in place to accommodate for that, it's very time consuming if you want to try to write back to everybody, let me tell you. And I wrote back to every single person. So for me, I've learned a lot of lessons over the last 2 years around when is it okay to have automations? And then when is it that you could have an automation, but actually for your business to be better, you're better off not having an automation there. I think that's really important because we've tried AI bots in our messaging, and I think we've spoke about this.
Yeah.
It's all well and good, and it might free you up some time, but people can smell the bot from a mile away. Whilst as now I have real people in talking to potential clients and stuff in my messages, I'm definitely getting a lot more people booking calls now.
Yeah. It's huge. That's like, yeah, people like want to talk to real people, not some chat generated bot. One thing, well, a few things. The first one is like, it's good to talk to. I always like asking people how long or how much time they were doing to get to like a skill in training or whatever. And it seems to be about 4 hours a day is what a lot of people say. Like I had hit him on, blanked on his handle, but Gareth,
G Money.
G Money. Yeah, yeah. He was on and he was like, yeah, it's 4 hours a day, like 6 days a week is his training. And, he's a savage, like, but it's like, that's basically everyone I know who's at a crazy high level with stuff is it's 4 hours. And then I think from a business standpoint, yeah, like 4 hours of like really deep work a day is, if you want to like really move the needle forwards, I think that's a good goal as well. I just want to bring it back, Danny, to like a lot of people will be like, I want more followers. Wow, if I have 500,000 followers, then it's kind of like the things that you crave a lot of the times. Like once I have more money or whatever, then I'll be happy. Whereas you said like, okay, I have 500,000 followers, but I actually feel a bit more lonely and disconnected now than I did before. Do you think that's to do specifically like that has made it feel even like the loneliness compounding? Or do you think it's maybe being in Sydney, moving to Gold Coast, like a combination of factors? Like what are your thoughts there?
I guess for me, it's like as a father, and as a mobility coach, and I've coached kids for many years, like when I was in person, the most important thing for me right now is ensuring that I'm around my kids as much as possible. And I'll make sense of this in a second. So you being in front of your kids as a dominant male for their first 10 years of their life, it not only helps them in terms of mental health and actually the strength, especially having two females, right? But actually more importantly is that it allows them to make better choices of men when they're older, because everybody has to follow the standard of what my dad was. And so for me, you know, I went from working in person, which I loved and craved because it allowed me to put on my show, so to speak, and People like to come into my classes because, there's humor involved as well as education. So we found that right level of entertainment as well as education, right? Which is what people want when they come to a group class, right? So for me, I found it infectious. And it was always, again, it was like being able to put on a show, so to speak. The thing now is there's a certain amount of money that I am happy with in my life. Don't get me wrong, I will always enjoy more money. But at the moment, there's a certain level of money that allows me to be around my kids more. And so for me, I have found this contentment in still building my business. Like, don't get me wrong, I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I work before my kids wake up. And I do a good brunt of 3 hours before my kids are awake, hopefully. So it's like the point of this is that I found it lonelier because I'm making the sacrifice because I can earn more money by not having to go to a gym and work for 2 or 3 hours, which actually takes me away from my kids for 2 or 3 hours of the day. So that in a way is what works with me, is that I'm sacrificing my human connection because I see that I can build something here that can change generational wealth for myself and my family. But it comes with the loneliness of, like, unless I go out and talk to a neighbor, like, there's no one else here, right? So that's what I struggle with in terms of the loneliness, because yes, moving to a new location, but if I was in Sydney, I'd still be here, right? So it might look a bit different, but it would still be some form of a studio, because to tell people, like, I'm earning 2 or 3, even 4 times as much as I was earning as an in-person coach. And I was working full time as an in-person coach, which meant I also had to commute away from the house and was away from my family. So that's something that I'm constantly trying to juggle with. So how I do it is I do seminars every now and again. I make sure I get myself on some fitness events so that I am presenting. And then I go and I work with, like, for example, some of the softwares that I use. Whenever they do like a get together, I usually go to them so that I can actually talk to people about similar things that I enjoy. And that's been something that I've had to put my hand up and say, okay, if you don't do this, it's gonna be a slippery slope, because likewise, I don't train here. I actually go to commercial gym so that I can actually make eye contact with people and I can talk to people. Like, so that's been quite interesting. Hopefully that kind of goes into a bit more detail around the loneliness and what I've been doing to try to address it, right? And why it's there.
Yeah, big time. And it's like I don't know the exact quote, but it's like, there's no perfect decisions, there's just trade-offs. And like, you are sacrificing maybe more of a social outlet with your work at the moment to build something for your family, and, to have that kind of the freedom as well. I think that the commuting is such a big one. Like, I always think about that. I'm like, I was walking, just like, I haven't had to commute to work since 2019 now. And I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful that I can
Yeah.
do my job here with just a laptop. Like, it's unbelievable. And then, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Like, I was like, when I was working full time in Melbourne, I was kind of like, oh, I actually don't want to be around people on the weekends, because it's just in-person PT. It's so full on. Like, it's fun, but like, you're constantly on with the person or with the people. And I was actually reading one of Dan John's books during the week. He's speaking at the conference as well, or at the summit. And he said, like, the biggest net benefit for his physical fitness over the last 40, 50 years is intentional communities. That's what he said. Like, I always like listening to like people who are, he's 67, like, the guy knows his stuff. He's made lots of mistakes. He knows what works. And it's like, I at this point now, I totally agree with it. Like, I think the handstand training and the calisthenics training was really good. But what happened to me was, I found like it was also you're doing that by yourself a lot of the
It's
time.
isolated.
Yeah. It's not like you're going to BJJ or rugby or soccer or pickleball. And all of my training was like that. And then that's why I used to love the workshops, but it never clicked with me why, but it was because of the community, and you're doing stuff with other people, and it was like more of a collaboration event. And now, yeah, with the dancing is just having somewhere to go like once or twice a week and seeing the same familiar faces. For me, it's definitely a big missing piece. It was actually one of the girls I know from Melbourne as well. She's a circus artist, incredible, like unbelievable. She can do everything. And I put up a post about loneliness, I don't know, 2 years ago. And she was like, oh my God, that's actually exactly was my issue as well. And she was living in Germany. And she was like, me and my partner and my child were actually going to move back to Australia because I was really struggling. And then I just joined a martial arts class, and then I was fine. Like, it was just, she just needed to have somewhere to go to like interact with people every week. So yeah, it's such a huge thing, like just having that kind of community to tap into.
Yeah, it's something that I always did when I was younger. So like when I moved to Perth back in 2014, like I joined a Gaelic football team. So I knew then that the people who were playing that sport were going to have the same interests as me. So it made a lot of sense. But obviously the biggest struggle that I've had, and I mentioned this earlier, is more when it's post sport. So it's like when your body maybe isn't ready for that anymore. And it's like, this is why people lead into playing golf as an example, because it's a very social sport. And likewise with pickleball now, because you can have a bit of a laugh and you can like, although it is getting more competitive, but I completely agree. And that's something that I've struggled with. Like, and I literally had this open, because myself and my fiance, Amy, have an amazing relationship in that we can be very open to each other. And that was the first thing that I said to her. I said, I'm feeling quite lonely. Like, and like that, it was just kind of like, right, well, let's put our hands up and let's actually go out and search. Like, so what do we want to search for? One thing that I did notice was that if I talk in the fitness industry, I was the person that everybody wanted to listen to. And that's great because I do like to obviously give out my education and help people. But it got to a certain point where I was like, I need to start learning from people now. And so that's why I entered into more like business space and more into, I have a tech background. So I started to search into more spaces around that because I was so interested and engrossed in it. And one thing that we haven't really touched on that I can just mention is that the best thing, and you'll agree with this, the best thing I ever did was get a bit of mentoring and actually get a bit more like help. Because the minute I did that, I saved myself so much time. I was 5 years in here just doing things and just not reaching out. And I would say this year, my business has like drastically improved from a financial standpoint and I'm actually spending more money. So it's ironic, right? It's like before I was like, oh, I don't want to spend that money. And I was doing well. Now I'm spending like 3-4 times as much as I was, but actually now my earnings are a lot more. And I think that's something that people negate a little bit, where it's actually spend a little bit of money, you will earn tenfold.
Invest versus expenses. Like that's everyone I know who's wildly successful. They're like, oh, this is an investment. It's not a cost. Like it's because if you can put something in and get 10 times back, like why wouldn't you do that? Yeah, I'm the same, man. I always see people spinning their wheels and I'm like, why don't you just get someone to coach you? Like it's going to save you so much time and energy and problems down the line and even currently. Mate, we're coming to the end, but yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think it's a good conversation to have because especially social media comparison and everything, it's not like everything's going to be perfect. Like it's going to be an issue if you don't address it, regardless of if you get more followers or not. That's not going to fix things. But yeah, I just really appreciate you as well, man. Like it's cool that we're building together and like just helping each other out. And yeah, I think that's just collaboration for me is just the biggest thing. And also like building long-term relationships, like not being like, well, let's try and milk Danny as much as I can and then churn and burn. It's like, no, like I want to keep like, especially in the fitness industry, like I'm 13 years in now and you just see like there's less and less people, the longer you stay in like after 10 years, like most people are gone. So yeah, it's just awesome to have this connection.
Yeah, because the one thing that I say to people is, and this is where it resonates, it's when I could train 5 hours a day and when I had all that disposable time, you can make your life look a lot prettier than reality. And I see a lot of fitness influencers who, are single, don't have kids, are a little bit younger, and they can fabricate things and they can make things look really, really good. I like to show people raw and honest. It's all I've ever done. And I've been able to be myself and still get to this stage. And that's something that I think everybody should focus on. Like, don't look at the latest and greatest. Don't look at someone else and think that their life is just absolute roses. Like, because, life is just like any kind of investment. It's not linear, and there will be highs, there will be lows. And we just appreciate that. Like, if you're doing what you really enjoy, which is like, I love making content. I love even editing videos every now and again. I love telling stories. So I love what I do. Yes, there is times where there's shit that I don't like. So do you know what I do? I offset it to somebody else. And the minute I've started to do that, guess what? I put a lot more attention into the stuff that I really like, and my business just keeps going this way. And that's kind of what I'll constantly reiterate to people. It's like, don't do it for likes, because there's strategy behind it. 2 strategies for that are, like I said, get your little silly gecko to get you 7 million views, get people into your carousel, and then from it, once they're in the carousel, then give them the value. There might be a difference. So for example, my client testimonials get me, I don't know, maybe 20 likes, maybe 50 likes, but I might get 5 people who reach out to me because they've seen that post and then say, that's me. I want you to show me how I can get to where that person got to. The other one is just to get people into that carousel. They're coming in, they're seeing my videos, and maybe 6 months, 12 months down the track, they're going to be into this client testimonial stage.
Yes, that's a huge one. And it's kind of like also just coaching, like give them what they want and then what they need as well. You don't start bombarding people with what you think they need. You want to get them bought in first, and then you can actually coach them and educate them on what they actually need.
Exactly. And I think the best thing that I ever did was that I did it for the love. Like, I didn't post it going, someday this is going to go viral. I was just like, I really enjoy posting this stuff, and I really enjoy that I'm helping people. And then all of a sudden it did kick off, and I still have the same mentality. I just really enjoy making quirky videos and being authentic and telling people that they've got shitty hips, and it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, awesome, bro. Really appreciate you jumping on, mate. Yeah, as we'll do it again over the next few months, definitely. And where is the best place for people to check out your stuff?
So all social media is Handsdan. I like to keep things very simple. I'm Irish. And yeah, mainly if you're interested in mobility, or if you're interested in learning how to go online, then that's kind of what we do.
Awesome, Danny. Appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.